मैं start करता हूँ, right?
Yeah.
So good afternoon, everyone. Once again, welcome in this 15 days online faculty development program. Today we have with us Professor Ramnathan from JNU. Professor Ramnathan is talk about how to write the research proposal. So basically, Professor Ramnathan has a vast teaching experience, more than 25 years. So he has published more than 60 papers in reputed national and international journals. He has produces 83 PhDs. Students
Hey,
agree.
33 PhDs, sir.
33. Sorry,
And
33
216
PhDs.
papers.
33
And
PhDs
216
and
papers. Yeah.
216 research publications, and he has completed 18 international projects and 30 national projects in the from funded by different agencies. So once again, he has awarded Best Teacher Award from by INSA, Institute of Science. And thank you so much, sir, for
National Science
accepting.
Academy.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation. Thank you so much once again. Welcome to you all.
Okay.
Whatever we are not mentioned, sir, you can mention, sir.
You can
Yeah,
mention,
no
sir,
problem.
because
No
we are not.
problem. No, it's
Yeah.
just
Uh,
because it is everybody has to do the work, research and activities as a teacher in the universities. So good morning to all of you. I think participants are joined or not?
all are which is they have joined, sir. Basically, this is the live and
Okay.
our YouTube channel, which is everything which
Okay,
is on the
YouTube
YouTube.
channel. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So, thank you, G, for inviting me for this talk on this writing research projects and fund and approaching the funding agencies. So, the writing research projects, especially in the science, even in the other social science and other related subjects, is a very important in terms of getting the fund to run the laboratory and to implement your ideas, because for any new scientific ideas you got into your mind, that has to be implemented through because some of the research programs we don't need some basic science. Some of the applied sciences, like we are doing in the applied sciences, like we have to go to the field work, we have to go to the we have to purchase the instruments to monitor the environmental parameters like water quality, air quality, the discharge, air pollutions. So we need some of them also funding for those purposes, and also to support the students, because any research program now is without the students involvement, that is not going, because ultimately the whatever the new ideas you got, that has to be transferred to the young minds. And then that should be basically in the environmental science, we have a lot of issues related to the pollutions, related to the water management, and then the groundwater management, etc., etc. For the individual case-to-case studies, we are supposed to look into the individual aspects, and accordingly we have to develop a scheme, that is to understand why this particular problem is there, and what is these causes. It is a natural causes or anthropogenic causes. What are the interventions required in order to address these issues, to reduce the, for example, over exploitation of the groundwater, or to understand how these pollutions is happening in this particular soil or the particular sediments. So we need to know the causes, and then the approaches to address these causes. And then if it is a natural, we have a separate way of addressing these issues. And if it is anthropogenic, we have the different way of approaching these things. Some of them we need the instruments, some of them we need the data to address these issues. For example, if you have the data from the Central Pollution Control Board for addressing a water pollution in the particular stretch of the river, if you have this continuous data, the time series data, to find out that whether this particular pollution is coming from the non-point sources that is identified, for example, identified primary management areas, and then the critical source areas. So if there is, if you could able to use this, some of the parameters, chemical parameters, biological parameters, to find out these PMAS and the CSAS critical source areas, then we will be able to identify how to address these issues and trace out the sources of these pollutions into the river. And then you can use the data available with the central pollution control, because they have the monitoring data for every hour and every seconds. It depends upon the locations they got it. And some of the areas, for example, we call it as in the ungauged basins. We call it ungauged basins. For example, if it is in the Himalayas, we don't have a discharge stations. That is, central water commissions don't have the discharge stations in the above 3000 meters in the Himalayas. But ultimately, all these waters join together as a first order, second order stream. Ultimately, they will reach the tributaries of the Bias, Satluj, Indus, and then become the Indus. So there we have to have the instrumentation facility. We don't have data. We have to go and monitor. So and then, for example, critical zone management in the region. The critical zone is a zone where we have the interaction between the like ecological systems. We have the hydrological, hydrosphere, biosphere, and the lithosphere interactions, and how these water and nutrient sources are there, how they are interacting with each other, whether the pollution is affecting them. So we select the particular region and then analyze the critical zone management. So that type of research, we need to have the monitoring stations, flux tower we have to keep, we have to keep this. So instrumentation is also very important, and then funding for the research scholars, because any research program, unless until you have that in the laboratory, if you do in the laboratory also, we need some young minds to be trained. For that we need a funding. And then for running that, purchasing a chemicals, nowadays the chemicals and glasswares are very expensive. So for running a lab, for example, a small environmental lab, to support some 5 to 6 PhD students, we need to have minimum running expenses of 1 lakh to 2 lakh for every 2 3 months for consumables like glasswares and chemicals and other things. So it depend upon the, and then the maintaining the instrumentations. So if you have the high tech instruments, like a sensitive instruments, then we need to have the maintenance, and then gas spares. So for everything we need to have this funding for that. So it is very important to get the research projects for running, for supporting your PhD students, and for running the lab, maintaining the lab, and then bring out some good output which will be useful for the society, or for the planners, or for the managers, for any interventions, or for supporting their running programs, or to maintain the dams or reservoirs, for etc., to reduce the pollutions, the air pollution, for example, and then they reduce the COVID. And then, for example, in the COVID, people are approaching in several ways. For example, somebody working in the air. How long when we sneeze it, this micro particles will be in suspension, which is going to be there for longer residence time. If it is having longer residence time, then it is going to affect more people in the regions, because it is so somebody is working on the wastewater. So how this our excreta and other waste going from the virus affected people is going into the wastewater, and how that can be used as a tracer to find out the containment zones which are the having this lot of virus infected areas. So for everything we need to have this monitoring and all those things. So writing a proposal is an art. I will say that it is an art to write a proposal, because the proposals nowadays, because everybody needs fund to run the laboratory, everybody needs to support their PhD scholars. So there are some issues in writing that, because it depends upon the thrust area of each of the, for example, if you go to the Department of Science and Technology, so every year there will be a different thrust areas developed by the different. For example, there is a nanotechnology group, and there is a water technology program, and then we have the carbon sequestration program. So they have the different programs, and then the Himalayan ecology program, and that is That is another program. So they develop a program in order to address the problems. For example, how to manage the resources of the Himalayas. It's water, it is the forest, it is the nutrient, it is the biodiversity in the region. So that is why this program has been developed. The nanotechnology program has been developed to address the issues like how to use this nanotechnology for removing pollution, for pharmaceuticals, for the medicine, and then developing some medical applications like fractures and all, how to replace the bones. So the nanotechnology program and the water removal technology, that is also people are using biochar, people are using this natural materials, geotextiles, and similarly the nanomaterials are used to treat the water. Some of them we have the polluted waters, naturally polluted waters, because of the change in the pumping rate, changing in the oxidation reduction process in the region. One is that like arsenic, like fluoride, like uranium. So we have a lot of problems in India by the natural pollutions as well as the anthropogenic pollutions in that, like mercury, we have that selenium in that region. So we have fluoride, nitrate. So these are the anthropogenic process by which they enter to the groundwater or the river water. So in most of the river systems, we have primarily we have the non-point sources. That's what I told in the told PMAS and the CSAS in the region. So if you know the primary sources, we will be able to tell that, okay, this industry is contributing to this, that this industry has to be treat the water before entering into the river Ganga. But even then we know that some of the point sources, but river Ganga still is polluted because we have a lot of non-point sources entering into that one. How to address these issues, whether it is coming from the agricultural activity, whether it's coming from the industrial activities or from the urban areas. So, so the water technology program has been evolved in such a way that to address some particular issues in the particular. For example, 3 years back, most of the work has been oriented towards the arsenic in the addressing this, for example, in West Bengal, UP and Bihar, and some of the regions of the northeast regions. So they have this arsenic pollution in the groundwater. So people are suffering from the skin cancer and other things. So that program is then later the uranium. Like in Punjab, you see that there is a cancer train running in that one where this anthropogenic fertilizers using and other things will be converted into uranium, which is toxic in that one. So nitrate is a very big problem in most of the regions in the country because of agriculture and other sources in the region. So based on that, the programs has been evolved. So you should be looking into these programs, thrust areas in the regions. So and then you have to write a proposal accordingly to the requirement of these agencies. And also, and for example, if they are asking the three thrust areas, that is one is that arsenic mobilizations, natural modeling process, anthropogenic, and then what are the interventions you have to take. So they may be giving, for example, three thrust areas for addressing these issues. So all your projects will be oriented into the three. So you have to look into that, how to address the three thrust areas they have given in their advertisement. So these three states, because they have been brainstormed all these three stressed areas before they put up in the website, because that is the issues they see throughout the country. These are the issues. So they take one by one into that one and then try to address these issues. Similarly, if you take this air pollutions, people are worried about the Delhi is most of them is haze. Today as also it is having haze, and then a lot of suspended materials and fog, and then respiratory problems are coming. So there is a special program evolved by the Ministry of Environment and Forest on how to use this technology to remove the particulate materials and then clean the air in the regions. So because we cannot stop the sources. So one is that we are trying to stop the sources from the burning of these crops and from the vehicles coming, all those things, and then the black carbon coming, and the gray carbon coming, and these things they try to address from the sources. After that, sometimes we will not be able to address the issues in the sources because the sources cannot be contained. Because, for example, in farmers, unless until they are compensated with the money to reduce the burning, they should be given their waste should be purchased and then converted into fuel or other purposes. So a lot of money is required to invest to save the farmers. If you are not giving the farmers, then they have to burn, they will burn it. So ultimately that will affect the air pollution in the region. So that type of program evolved, and then for example, the IITs are combined together. They are developing a system by which the huge tower has been established, and then it will suck the air and then put the filter in between inside and then remove the pollutants, and then return back the air which is free from the particulates. They are trying to do that, but still it is not successful. And as it has been done in Beijing and other areas, they have done in the huge towers has been left. So the technology oriented research programs are there, science oriented programs are there, basic science oriented programs are there. So depend upon your expertise into that one. Some of them will be addressing the basic issues of for example, tuberculosis. Somebody is treating the cancer, and then they will be so every issues, health issues, they are also some of them are addressing that. So the current issues and the causes, that is what first you have to identify, depend upon your expertise. Some of them needs single expertise, and most of them needs the multidisciplinary expertise. For example, if you do the environmental issues are not a single. If I am a chemist, I cannot address the environmental issues because it is a mixture of all the natural processes, an anthropogenic process, biochemical process, geochemical process, biogeochemical process, hydrological process, and all these processes will be combined. So we need to have some interdisciplinary people to address these issues. Somebody should be biotechnology, somebody from the geological background, somebody from the chemistry, somebody from geochemistry. So we have to work together in the interdisciplinary approach by which we can able to address the current issues and which is facing for each country in this region. Similarly, if you take about the climate change is a multi disciplinary approach, because everything is contributing to the climate change. So rise in temperature, and then it is having a consequences on this rise in sea level, and then reduction in the rainfall or sudden increase in the rainfall, and then sudden flood is coming in that one. And then there is a that is ultimately is going to affect the recharge of the groundwater, and then they are going to affect the runoff in the region. Then it will create the flash floods, some of them in the lower regions, where there is water is not there. For one dry region is Rajasthan nowadays facing the flash flood, and then the upper regions like Himalayas and the Western Ghat, they are facing the glacial lake outburst or the cloud burst in that regions. So it varies from the region to region. Because of this climate changes, we are getting this type of natural hazards happening accelerated, and then that is affecting that one. So climate change address issues, we need to have a modeler, we need to have a statistician, we need to have a big data manager, we should have some artificial intelligence agencies who is expertise, who can able to develop a program using these big data, and then say that this is the cyclicity by which this event is happening. This is anomalous event happening in this region. So we have a multi-disciplinary approach in most of the environmental issues or the current issues facing with the human beings in all over the world. So the agencies like every ministry, for example, I talked about the Department of Science and Technology. Similarly, we have the SERB, which is a subsidy of the DST in that one. That they try to give the basic research in the earth sciences, in the environmental sciences, in the botanical sciences, chemical sciences. They try to give for example, somebody is interested at the basic issues like how this evolution of this particular species happened, how this extinction of this species happened in this world, why this particular fauna and flora is becoming extinct, or why this keystone species in this particular region is absent, why it is happening in that one, why they are not able to survive, which is there for 10 years or 20 years before, which shows that the environment is changing and the ecology is changing in these regions, through which that they are not able to identify. They will be, so some basic research is also they are supporting in that one. Similarly, if we go to the Ministry of Earth Science, they are also having the applied sciences like monsoon. They are expertise in understanding the changes happening in the monsoon. How many parameters? There are various parameters which controls this or influences the monsoonal changes. So they try to develop a model using this n number of parameters, and then they try to project it for the future for the farmers and other things. Whether this monsoon is going to be normal, whether it's how many it's abnormal. This time also they predicted it's normal only with the 5% error in that one. That means their parameterization and the model which take into consideration several parameters are very accurate. That means they have the meteorologists, they have the modelers, they have the big data managers, artificial intelligence peoples, and then they combine together, and then they will project incorporating these data, and then try to identify what is happening. If there is a normal monsoon, if it is affected by the El Nino and La Nino effect, what is going to happen in the what is happening in the Pacific, it may affect our monsoon in the regions. So that is also they will predict in that one. So Ministry of Earth Science is having they are basically addressing the issues like mineral resource of the ocean, because they started with the first program in the manganese nodules in that one. So that is manganese nodules because nickel is the most important. You are not getting in the lithosphere, so they have to go to the ocean and then take it from the region. So they have the task to identify where are the resources there in that region, and then how we can use it for that, and how this ocean productivity, because most of the productivity of the ocean is controlled by the nutrient availability, and then the in the region, and then depend upon the sea surface temperature. If there is a rise in temperature, that is going to create the thermal expansion, which will lead to the sea level rise in that region. For example, Maldives, Lakshadweep, and then our Bangladesh. These are the good examples, neighbors. If there is thermal expansion happens, and then there is a rise in sea level of 1 to 2 meters, what will happen? They get submerged the entire land. If it is submerged, what are the consequences? The consequences is that one is that your all freshwater ponds and the groundwater will be contaminated. Your agricultural soil becomes saline, and then people will suffer in that one. And then the productivity, because most of the coastal areas are highly productive, deltas and other regions, rice belt of India, we call it all the deltas, the rice bowl of India. So that is also going to affect. So the research is oriented into that one. Similarly, some of the agricultural, for example, IARA is working on this agriculture. They are trying to identify, develop new crop systems which can sustain with the high temperature, which can sustain if there is a water stress, if there's it can sustain if there is high salinity, because we have traditionally a lot of paddies in our ancestors used, which survive in the waterlogging area, which survive in the high salinity area, and then they have become more nutritious. Now that we have lost it, because maybe after the green revolution, people are going for only short-term crops, paddy crops, and then we lost some of the traditional varieties. Now there is a revival is going on, research is going on, and then they try to identify that one. And that is the one of the research agriculture is doing, because the food security is very important. Similarly, water security is very important. For that, the food and water security is the minimum the government has to assure for the people. That is, the food and water is the thing. And third one is coming, of course, is the air pollution. That also the air security should be coming in the future. So depend upon the your expertise, and then like social scientists and economists are working on this nowadays in hand in hand with all the scientists, because every issue is linked to the socio-economic aspects. If you take water, people, stakeholders are involved in that one. So that psychology, their how they will use this water, even if you recycle the water. For example, the water in Singapore and other countries, if you go, they have the two types of water. One is the new water, and then if you go to the supermarket, you will get the two types of water. One is that you will get the mineral water or the distilled water. In that, you will get some $3 to $4 for 500 ml. If you get the new water, then you will get less than $1 in that Singapore. That means that is recycled water. So that is certified by the government, and that is you can drink it. But again, it involved the social psychology of the people in the region, aesthetics of the situation, that one. So the social science people has to be, for example, that construction of the dam, you have to migrate the people. So how it is going to affect the livelihood of the people? If there is a salinity problem in the region, then the soil will become, agricultural land become a fallow lands. And if you go to Punjab, UP, and Bihar, you see that suddenly there will be a fallow land. That is a bald land. We call it as a bald land or fallow land, because without knowing, farmers knowing that they use a lot of fertilizers, and this water get enriched with this salt, and then they get precipitated, and then occupy all the pore spaces of the sediments and soils in the region. And once it is occupied, because any agricultural activity needs porosity and permeability, where the nutrients and water and air should be circulated, and then the roots will get this system for photosynthesis and other things. So that has become a fallow land in that region. So the issues are very large issues going in the different fields, agricultural to multiple issues. So that the people psychology, then economy is coming into the picture in that one. If you implement this program, how much is the people's livelihood and the economical aspects will be. For example, COVID, you might have seen now that a lot of problem with the migrant workers and other people, they are not able to survive, and their psychological problem and the financial problems, they cannot earn if there is a lockdown, because there should be a lockdown because the virus is transmitting. So what is the trade-off between this social livelihood and the health issues? That is what the government is looking into that one. So we need a type of sociological intervention and economic intervention into that one, psychological interventions, how to manage this issue. So every issues that the human is facing and the society is facing, because the growth of the society is increasing, and then we have to sustain this. Swati, I will call you. I will call you. I am in the meeting. So every aspects, like Indian Council of Social Science is there. So Indian Economic Services are there. So everywhere that projects and everything, everybody has to work on this, because the country needs a lot of research output to support their programs. And then you will be able to tell that if there is a flaw, your output will help them to understand this is a flaw, and then they can rectify. If it is good, then how to improve further better in that one. That's how the research has to be in any sector of these things. You have to do that one. So every individual ministry and every ministry is having that thrust areas. For example, sanitation, that is water and sanitation programs are there. In that, they try to address how much is the water can be recycled, because Swachh Bharat, we are giving a lot of all the villages are getting, all the houses are getting this laboratories, and where does the water come from, how to manage the water, how to recycle the water, how they can be used to given to them if there is a drought area, if there's excess water. And that also, if there is excess water and there is a flooding, all these sewerages and these septic tanks will be mixing into the water, and then you will get a lot of E. coli and other typhoid and other things will come. So there are problems for the excess of water, there are problems for the drought type of situation in the water, and then that link to the sanitation, that link to the health, that link to the food security, that links to the water security in that one. So every specialist has to work and in combination with the team, which is having a multidisciplinary approach, and then the research questions has to be developed. What are the research questions? What are the hypotheses? You have to develop an hypothesis first, and this hypothesis, to address this hypothesis, what are the research questions you have to address? So for these research questions, how will be addressed? What are the methodologies to address these, and what are the sample size? What are the parameters you take into consideration to represent this? For example, I want to represent the stretch of the river between one stretch to other. So if I am looking into water, I should know that how many water samples I will be collecting, which represents the river, as well as represent the input from the tributary, as well as it represent the groundwater influx during the summer into the and the urban areas influx. So my sample should be representing all these. Similarly, if there is a social research people are doing, how many people are using this water? So they have to take the sample size in such a way that urban, rural, agriculture, and then the migrated people. So the sample size and these things has to be very important in that one. The methodology has to be created in such a way that for sociology, for economics, for hydrology, for the hydrochemistry, for the pollution studies. So we should have this methodologies, which is required the sample representations, and then the homogenization of the samples, which represents ultimately the result based on your sampling only. Then because and some you have to give the question. For example, you're working on the social aspects, you have to talk to the people and then develop a questionnaire. What are the issues they are facing in that one, whether it is a economic issue, whether it is a health issue, whether it is some people are drinking this water for a long time. Somebody is getting the kidney stone, somebody is getting the uh, mm, um, fluorosis in that one, teeth and then the bone and the skeletal fluorosis they are getting in that one. So how long they are drinking, and why it is happening, what is the alternative they are having to overcome this. If somebody is having this bent knees in that area, in arsenic area you get the skin cancers and other things in that region. So one is that social issues they are facing because they are drinking this water. There's no alternate source for them to drink this water in this region. So there is a linkage to their health, linkage to their economy, linkage to the social aspect in that region. So your methodology should have this representation of the sample size and other. If it is purely analytical work, you should have this whether your sample represent the a particular sample you are taking, because you are taking to the lab. So the sample should represent it, and then you have to take a lot of precautions to store the samples, to preserve the samples, and then analyze the samples. When you started to analyze the samples, and you have to reduce, you have to reduce your human errors. You have to see that your analysis is more accurate, because some data you give, that data is not matching with that what is actually happening in the field. Then it is not your all your analysis are going to be irrelevant in that case. So we should have this proper analytical framework. You should have the duplicate sample, you should have the standard sample, you should have the blank samples in that one, which represent, and then and you have to know that what is the standard deviations between these two, three representatives in that one. And then all the statistical analysis, you have to find out your analysis represent the field data. Then only you will give that, so this is happening. These are the interventions we have to take in these regions. So that type of one is that. Another one is that we are also getting a lot of short-term projects for us. This is one of the research projects we generally get it 3 years, 2 years in that one, sometimes 5 years, depend upon the issues, like which issue you are taking, and long-term data needed. So some of them are consultancy projects, short-term projects. So people are also getting short-term projects from the government and non-governmental organizations also. That is consultancy projects, means this is happening in my industry. So this are you a modeler, and they'll hire some chemist and modeler to find out that my industrial pollution is going to affect the river or not. So they will be putting into the groundwater, or they are putting into the effluent treatment plant. If the plant is not working, how much is water is going to the river from the surface flow, how much is going into the infiltration to the groundwater and going. So they will tell us to modify in 6 months to find out in during the monsoon and non-monsoon season how much is the pollutant is entering. So that type of consultancy projects No, similarly, the socio-economic issues like somebody has implemented some program, and then you will be given that whether this program is implemented properly, the results are good, and how it can be used. So that is also type of consultancy projects. You will get short-term project, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year in the regions. Something like existing projects you evaluate, or you have to give a solution, short-term solutions, depend upon the issues facing by the industries and other things. So you can get a consultancy project to develop your lab and then support your research scholars, and then you will be getting. So similarly, there are also, you can get the support from the uh, for the postdoc students who have done the PhD. So you'll be getting a lot of programs are there from the UGC, CSIR, DST. Even in small projects, big projects, research projects, programs are also there everywhere, and you can have to apply and then get that project in the region. So there is not of scope in getting the projects in different, because we need nowadays some at least basic infrastructure and support the, because without money, how 5 year PhD students can work. So somebody may be getting directly they pass the written test, and then they will get the JRF from the CSIR or UGC. So so there are 50% people don't get it. For them, we have to give the fund for it. We need, and even if the people are getting CSIR fellowship, they don't have money for lab running expenses, field expenses. So we should support through this project in these regions. So that is how this projects is very important to write it. So the writing a project is always it's an art, and it takes time. So because you have to give a lot of information so that the experts will look into it and then see that. And also you have to have the budgetary part also. So you should have some assessment, how much expense is required. Somebody will put a very low budget, somebody with very high budget for that. So that is also a big issue now. If you have put too much budget, then you will not get the project also. If it is put too less, and then the experts will think that this fellow don't know the idea to how to implement this program. So that is also a big issue in that one. You should have the assessment and how many manpower required to run this program in 3 years, how much money I required for the field, how much for the glassware, how much for the secondary data collections, how much for the data analysis. I need a software to compute these data. So all these information you should have in advance before you apply a project. And then most of the time you are asked to defend, except the international programs. So the international programs, they will assess us by your input only. But in national programs, most of the time, we have to present and defend our proposal in front of the experts to get the fund. So that is also a art, writing and defending and getting the fund and implementing successfully, and then bring out the outputs. Or without outputs, then you will be graded as a very low grade and you will not get the project next time. So the grading they give nowadays, they are giving grade from 5 to 10. So if it is having 5, that means worst output you have given. If you are having 8 to 10, that means you get the better output in the regions. So this type of assessment also they made in that one, depend upon you. The output is includes, one is the, you are addressing the objective of the project properly and bringing out these results. Another one is that publishing the papers relevant to that in the, I mean, any journal, any refereed journal. It may be Indian journal, it may be an international journal, but output should be evaluated. And then you write a monograph or something, and your PhD students are submitting the thesis, and that is also one of the output. And then you are writing a book out of that. That is also output. And then you can give the suggestions, the future visions, how this output will be used for the future. What are the lacunas in my project, and how the future the research can be carried out in these regions. So you have to defend it, you have to bring the output, and then this, it's a lot of several stages are there in that one. So once you start the project, it's not, for example, you complete in 3 years, that's not over. Then after third year only you started publishing, and other things, PhD programs will come. So total 3, 4 into 5 years, this program will continue. You should give the output in that one. So you should have a vision and best planning. Your flow chart should contain all those things which represent all your step-by-step activities in the regions. And then You will get a lot of private funding also, like cloud funding. If you are having a good program, and then it is relevant to the society or relevant to some issues in the particular regions, some of the there's private agencies like Infosys or entrepreneurs, they give the cloud funding and then support your program. You can put it in the research gate. I want to do this program which is very useful, and then people are not working on that, which is very important for the society. Then you will get a funding, like Tata, they are giving, Infosys, they are giving. There are several agencies, they are giving to the issues related to the society in the region. So you will get funding through them also, and also through the cloud fundings also. If you put the issues and people can contribute to your fund, and then they will expect your results to be useful. So maybe some 100 people contribute to your same program, and then that become a cloud funding in that one. So that is through the artificial intelligence and all, they are doing it in that region. So that is also like startup programs. So a lot of startup programs are coming in this cloud funding, because which is not available in the society. People need that particular output. So the startups are getting fund, and then they are starting. Even government is having, and then innovation programs are Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Innovation programs are there through which you can develop innovative ideas. They will support your ideas to develop some machines or some technologies, simple technologies, or reviving the traditional technology of water harvesting or groundwater recharge. So all these innovations will also be supported in that one. So we should have an idea. So that is what very important, creative ideas and the innovative ideas to get some support and implement it also. You should have the determinations to continue and implement it, because that is also very important. You cannot leave it in between and that I cannot do it. Then it is loss of fund, loss of time, and loss of everything, and then faith will go from your side. So a lot of things are involved in that, and a lot of problems will come, and you have to face it, and then finish the project. And output should be useful to the society or for the planners according to the program. You have to finish those programs. So besides that, we have a lot of international programs also, because India is having a lot of MOU for the scientific programs. If you go to any ministry website, you can get it, those like DST. If you have, there's international programs, separate division is there. They come out with advertisement every year with, for example, every country almost they have in a specific programs. So you can see the website of the DST, CSIR, Ministry of Earth Science, Ministry of Environment, and Ministry of Water Resources, and then the Ganga Action Plan. They have a lot of programs through which the Indo-US, Indo-Russian, Indo-Swedish, all these programs are there, through which we can also have an opportunity to work with international scientists working on the same issues, and which is having a different ideas, and they may be having some facilities better than you, or you will be having better facility to help them. And then train your research scholars, which is having high-tech instruments or some models, or some model which they use, and then modify it to your Indian conditions, or develop your own model in India. Uh, uh, that is type of things, because you cannot imitate all the models, which will not be helped. That's why most of the model outputs are not useful for the Indian situations. So you should develop a model for which is applicable to the Indian situations in that one. Similarly, there are direct international programs are available through which we can apply directly and get it, like International Foundation of Science, NASA, and then that. So similarly, a lot of programs are there, like in the European Union, they have this H2020 program. So they have a lot of programs directly also you can apply. You will get it through the websites from the international programs. In every country, they have that. European Union having, even countries like Netherlands having a separate program, Sweden is having a separate program for international scientists to compete and get that. US having, so every country is having the separate. You can also apply and compete with the international funding, and then you can get it also through that. So there are a lot of opportunities to get the funding if you have the good idea, and you have the idea to address some pressing issues in the society, in the environment, in the tech, in the industry. some technology is missing, you can do that one. So, or you will be giving the interface to the industry and the society. So whatever the thing, only thing is that you should have your own new innovative idea for research purpose. So I'm sorry, because of the lockdown, I could not go to the lab to get my PowerPoint, which is prepared. But I think I have given some of the ideas. If you have any doubt, you can ask to me, or send an email. I can give it to you in reply to you. Hello, sir. Hello.
Sir.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Just a minute, sir.
Hmm.
Assis. Assis. Give me a second, sir. We will
Yeah,
take some questions, sir.
no problem.
So the first question is Padma Havaldar.
Oh,
Which agency do the librarians can approach for a sponsorship for the research project?
sir, library science is also part of your Department of Science and Technology, CSIR and UGC. So they are also giving a projects in that one. There is no exclusively, and also ICSSR, social science, they are giving. So it's part of the activities of these agencies.
Mr. PB Bilawar, is there any funding agency or fellowship at international level in library and information science domain for the library science student?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is there. If you see the websites, it comes because every year there is a thrust area changes for these agencies, and then they will give this scholarships depend upon the MOU signed between the different countries. Only thing you have to look into these different agencies' websites, and then you will get it.
Okay.
No more question, Rajesh sir.
Just we can find out, sir. Yes, Assis.
Okay. I hope there is no more questions. Rest people are writing at the very nice lecture, very informative and very information and excellent session, sir. So people are saying very nicely words for you.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir,
Thank you.
for your views. I hope people learn a lot from your lectures.
Okay.
So,
Sorry, I could not give that PowerPoint. No problem.
No, not an issue because people are asking about that. Yeah.
Okay.
So if
thank
you,
so much for accepting.
if you sir, you can send the PPT. We can.
Yeah. I will send it once it is open.
Yeah.
Please, we will share with the participants. No issue.
So thank you very much.